Good morning, Annapolis. It's great to see you. I'm sorry we're not together in person today, but I'm really glad to be with you from my home up the road in Columbia, where, as John said, until a year and a half ago, I served as minister of the UU Congregation of Columbia, where I was called in 2003. I completed that ministry in 2024 after 21 years. And even after 19 months in this new post-parish chapter of my life, I still feel like I'm exploring what it means to be me, a professional minister, a Unitarian Universalist, a person of faith, someone who is useful, productive, valued in this different context. So it feels like a special gift to be able to be here with you today. I thank you to Reverend John for the invitation and Cindy being my partner in leading the service today, and everybody who, it certainly takes a team to put on a service like this. So thank you all. So last summer, I was meeting with a spiritual director who happens to be a Quaker. We were talking about how I was wrestling with this question of whether I could be, and if so, how would I be a productive contributor to the world, to my community, to my family, even if I wasn't earning an income, even if I wasn't conducting ministry in the same way that I'd been doing for most of my adult life? And Wade, the spiritual director, he looked at me and he said, in the Quaker tradition, we wouldn't be asking, is it productive? We'd be asking, is it faithful? Is my life faithful? Is this choice faithful? Is my behavior faithful? And so for the past 6 months, that question has really been a guide for me, kind of like if my personal mission statement was to be faithful. And when a decision needs to be made, I keep turning back to that mission and asking myself, is it faithful? Is this option faithful? Would that one be faithful if I did it instead? It's different than asking, should I do this? Do I have to? Do I want to? What will I get out of it? Who benefits? And it's definitely different than, will it make money? Or even, is it useful? So this morning, I'm going to share a little bit of my own story with you and offer some thoughts about how this question, is it faithful, can be a tool for all of us who want to live lives of integrity and meaning, particularly that are grounded in our most cherished values. My own story of faith begins in the Sunday school classrooms of a conservative Protestant Christian church when I was around 10 years old. Over the next few years, that church community would become the place where, with the exception of the household that I shared with my parents and brother, I felt most at home. With those church people, the teachers and youth leaders and choir directors and my peers, I felt loved and welcomed. There was a sense of belonging there. And also in that place, the church's shared values and dogmatic teachings were consistently reinforced. Those values and teachings then lay at the foundation of my adolescence and young adulthood. They informed my behavior outside of the church, in my friendships, at school, in how I spoke to my parents, and so forth. So when my very young self worried that my father might be at risk of some sort of divine punishment for not attending worship services with us regularly, I turned to my beloved Sunday school teacher for guidance. As a high school student, I sought out a youth leader when I felt guilty for not stopping to help a stranded motorist on my way to school. It was also my sense of religious faith that informed my very self-righteous and now very cringy judgment of friends who engaged in activities that I deemed immoral at the time. And it was also my adolescent faith that inspired me to write college application essays that said, essentially, I want to be well educated so that I can better serve Jesus in the world. As I aged, as I was exposed to a greater diversity of perspective and experience and worldviews, as my own understanding matured and expanded and deepened, the moral and ethical considerations of what I was facing also evolved. I was a junior in college the first time a friend shared with me that she had chosen to terminate an unintended pregnancy. It was a choice that ran directly counter to many of the teachings of that childhood church community that I came from. And yet it was a choice that somehow I knew in here, in my gut, in my heart, was the right choice for my friend. I didn't have the words for it then, but I can see looking back now that in that experience with my friend and her abortion, I was developing a more sophisticated relationship with this question. Is it a faithful choice? Perhaps on the surface, her choices, not just the abortion, but also the sexual activity that led to it, violated certain kinds of so-called religious rules as I understood them. But I was also learning that those weren't the only relevant values or principles. My friend held, and I would see that I did too eventually, other values that didn't look quite so tidy about prioritizing her own health, about her and others' personal agency, bodily autonomy, about self-respect, about rational evaluation of resources and her capacity to handle a full-term pregnancy and its aftermath. Ultimately, she had made a choice that was indeed a faithful choice. Later on, I would confront a similar moral dilemma in my own life when I fell in love with a classmate who was a woman. Two women in a romantic relationship was decidedly against the religious rules, especially for me in those days. And yet the love and goodness between her and me was undeniable. How could something so beautiful and life-affirming be wrong, we asked ourselves. The church would say it was sinful, and yet in that relationship, I was faithful and true, not only to my partner, but to values of love and freedom and respect and equality. It was that relationship, or really the end of that relationship after 3 years, that would be a catalyst launching my own search for a more adequate way to express and deepen the faith of my heart. And that's what led me to Unitarian Universalism over 30 years ago. Over the decades since then, the greatest gift of Unitarian Universalist community in my life has been its power to hone and clarify values and convictions so that I'm more adept at making faithful decisions. Being faithful isn't always comfortable, and it's rarely easy, even if it's obvious what the faithful choice might be. There is so much in this world that exerts pressure and influence. There's the desire that many of us carry to conform in an effort to belong. There are market forces that drive selfishness and greed. There's white supremacy culture that blinds us to realities of inequity and oppression. There's fear and division and hunger and cruelty and very real threats to democracy. So it takes effort and intention, perhaps especially as we strive, as your February theme invites you to do, to embody resilience in the midst of it all. As we face these realities of the world in which we live, we have to be deliberate and persistent in asking ourselves, is it faithful? To be faithful is to be trustworthy. It's to be in alignment with one's stated values. It's to be true to one's promises and covenants. And faithfulness is also informed by the context in which we are living and functioning. In my extended family, we faced a question of faithfulness about a decade ago, as my father was nearing the end of his life. He had been quite unwell for a while. He was significantly impacted by the effects of disease that caused atrophy in the frontal and temporal lobes of his brain. So he was a resident in a memory care facility at this point, and my mother, his wife of more than 50 years, visited him every day. She made sure he was well cared for, that he knew he was loved, that he hadn't been abandoned. And she began spending a lot of social time with another man. Some members of the family accused her of being unfaithful to her husband, my father. Yet she saw it differently, and I agreed with her that she was being true to the terms of their marriage, true to her own needs for connection and vitality. She was not being unfaithful. Recently, I delivered a presentation about my years of parish ministry and about the process of leaving a long-term ministry to a group of clergy and psychotherapists. At the end, one of them asked me if I would think about how it's different to leave a congregation than it is to leave a marriage. That is, he said, if you decided you were tired and weary in a marriage or that you didn't like aspects of it anymore, you would probably be inclined to address those things, not just to leave. So he said, how is it different in a relationship with a congregation? In responding to him, I noted that there's a significant difference between the expectations set at the beginning of the relationship. In my marriage, we said we would remain committed as partners until death separates us. In the relationship between minister and congregation, we had agreed at the beginning that it would be a finite time together, even if it was long term. So in one case, staying, in my case, is the faithful choice. In the other, leaving, especially when realizing that a separation will allow greater potential for both parties to thrive, is a faithful choice. And of course, separation can be true in a marriage as well. Faithfulness is always relative to a particular set of values and to a context to which one has voluntarily consented. In the time since I left parish ministry, almost 2 years ago now, I've wrestled with a modified version of this challenge of what it means to be faithful. There was a clarity in the parish provided by the structures of being a professional minister serving a particular institution. I was called and paid to function within a flexible but defined set of parameters in a context where we agreed together on priorities and mission and so forth. I did what I was called and paid to do. And at home, in that context, there was a general sense of a fair division of labor based on the fact that we were two parents with two full-time jobs. The jobs rewarded our capacity for production by paying us money. And being a money earner myself justified my benefiting from the household resources. So in the time since then, I've had to shift my understanding of what it means to be a deserving member of the household if I'm no longer contributing money to it. I find myself wondering if I'm being a productive member of the community, if I'm not performing in the same rigorous ways as I was in parish ministry. I find myself asking, does my presence in the world have value if I'm not earning a paycheck for it? It was these questions that led Wade, the spiritual director, to suggest that a more meaningful question than any of those might be, is it faithful? Am I being faithful? Is this particular action faithful? Am I being faithful in that choice about where to shop, about how to use available resources, about when and where to show up with my body, about the words I use in speaking when I'm angry, about whether to speak when I'm angry, about whether I should be silent or not in the face of injustice? What is the faithful response in any given moment? Is it faithful? Is it in alignment with my stated values, those that I share with this global community of Unitarian Universalism? Is it true to the covenantal relationship of my marriage, of the implicit and explicit promises I've made to the children I'm raising, of neighborly love and care? Earlier, you heard from Cindy the words of Catherine Schultz. She observed that our crossing is a brief one, best spent bearing witness to all we see, honoring what we find noble, tending what we know needs our care, recognizing that we are inseparably connected to all of it, including what is not yet upon us, including what is already gone. We are here to keep watch, not to keep. We are here, she says, on this brief crossing, keeping watch, staying connected, honoring what is noble, called to do so faithfully. You know already that on Thursday, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt and your own Nicole were part of a civil disobedience action at the U.S. Capitol. Dr. Betancourt, prior to the civil disobedience, delivered remarks at the Praying with Our Feet press conference that was held up the street at a church with many faith leaders in attendance. In her remarks, Dr. Betancourt said, Unitarian Universalists believe in the values of pluralism, interdependence, justice, and generosity as matters of religious faith. We hold sacred the belief that love lives at the center of all that we do. Recent events have torn apart families, terrorized already vulnerable communities, and killed individuals doing nothing more than protecting their neighbors. These actions not only violate basic human decency, they are also an affront to the values that all people of faith and conscience hold sacred. Hearing those remarks, I was reminded that we, you and I, Unitarian Universalists, have a clear set of shared values that are a touchstone for our individual and collective decision-making. At every step, are we being faithful to those values? Are we centering love? Are we cultivating pluralism and interdependence and justice and generosity? Writer Catherine Schultz suggests that it is nothing short of astonishing that we are here at all. And we know that it is sometimes overwhelming to be here at all. Everywhere we turn, someone has advice and admonitions about what we should be doing. Show up here, volunteer there, make this call, write that letter, do. And no one among us can do it all. So always the question is, what is the faithful thing for me to do? Not as performance, not because it's popular, but because it is true to the values I hold with my faith community and in my heart. So that's my wish, my prayer for all of us today, is that we will live with integrity, faithfully honoring our interdependence, cultivating justice, centering love, and asking with persistent intention, is it faithful? May it be so for you and for all of us.